We get second opinions all the time whenever we're making a large architectural change, or maybe a new feature, or if there's a bug that we can't seem to tackle or figure out. So, why aren't AI agents doing the same thing? Well, today we're going to be covering the Rubber Duck feature on GitHub Copilot and how it's going to be tackling this scenario. Now, the Rubber Duck did come out in GA on June 2nd, and this is only for the GitHub Copilot CLI. It is still experimental as of right now for the GitHub Copilot app, so that is the areas that you can find it in. Now, first thing, I do want to mention, in case you're not familiar, what is Rubber Duck or rubber ducking? And so the idea or the concept is whenever you're stuck on trying to figure out a solution, or maybe unable to figure out how to resolve a bug that you're trying to fix. The idea was that you would actually talk to an inanimate object, in this case a rubber duck, and you would actually describe to them as if they were someone new who had not been working on the issue. So you'd be starting from square one, describing the problem, all the areas that you've been attempting, or all the challenges that you've had, and ways that you're trying to solve it. And by talking through it this way, you almost had like an aha moment and figured out the solution on your own. Now, that's not exactly how this works, though. This is more of a second opinion. So I love the name for the nostalgia point of view, but it doesn't work the same way if you're thinking of the rubber duck definition back then. This is more of a second opinion, and in this case, from another model family. So as you probably know from your own experience using different AI models, you'll notice patterns that come about from whether it's an Anthropic Claude model or a GPT model or a Gemini, etc. And so the idea is to use another model family to then review the changes so that we can kind of cover more blind spots, if you will. Now, I do like to mention that there was a blog post that the GitHub team shared, and it showed here that Claude Sonnet 4.6 paired with the Rubber Duck running GPT-5.4 achieved a resolution rate approaching Claude Opus 4.6 running alone. So it closed almost 75% of the performance gap between Sonnet and Opus. And that's huge, right? Because Opus, of course, costs much more in terms of tokens and AI credits compared to Sonnet 4.6 pairing it with GPT 5.4. So that's something to take into consideration. Another thing that I do want to mention is when does the Rubber Duck activate? So I've been playing around it for quite some time, and it does attempt to call the Rubber Duck automatically, whether it's proactively or reactively. And there are some three key areas that it does this. It'll do it after drafting a plan, so before the implementation, and this is a fantastic time to rubber duck. You want to make sure your plans are all squared away and all the blind spots are covered before we actually start writing a piece of code. It can also be after complex implementations to get a second pair of eyes, or after writing tests but before executing them. Now, I have noticed something, and it is definitely confirmed here, is that they made a key design choice. The agent invokes rubber duck sparingly, and this is definitely true from my experience. It doesn't always run it whenever you do, or whenever you have these three types of scenarios. And so if you do want to use this more often, I would recommend either A, including it in your prompt, saying, please have rubber duck review after implementation or after your plan, or after it's done, there is a slash command that I'll show you later where you just do slash rubber duck and it will review that last change or plan, etc. And of course, you can do additional prompting afterwards. The last thing I will mention before I go to the demo is that this is currently only available if the main agent is using a Claude or GPT large language model. So I believe it didn't work or it doesn't show up if you use like Haiku, since those are a bit smaller. And also it doesn't work if you're using a model like Gemini. So that is something that I've noticed as well. Now, I have noticed as I was playing with it that you can activate it, but I'm going to assume that that's not the optimal route and that the GitHub team has made it work a bit, or maybe it's a bit more optimized when using the Claude or GPT large language models. So since those are the two models available, if you choose Claude, it will then, of course, rubber duck with GPT, and vice versa. If you're using GPT, it'll rubber duck with Claude. Now, one thing I do want to note is that it is based on the model that you're using currently, or the one that's selected currently. As you can see here, this one actually had Gemini. I switched it to Gemini, actually had it create a plan. This was just a basic, calculator app plan, nothing crazy. If I go down here, we can then see that I asked it to rubber duck, and it really just did a self rubber duck, just kind of talking to itself. I then changed the model from Gemini 3.6 Flash to then Claude Sonnet 4.6. And then when I asked it to rubber duck, or actually use a slash command, it actually did invoke the rubber duck agent and called GPT 5.6 Terra. So just to kind of show you what I mean, since I have Claude Sonnet 4.6 right now, if I do rubber duck, the slash command actually comes out and I can provide additional instructions. If I were to change to, it doesn't matter, any of the Geminis, um, rubber duck no longer exists. So just to kind of let you know, again, probably suboptimal, but just things that I noticed when I was playing around with it. What I did do though here is I wanted to add a new feature, wanted to build a feature to track credit cards and their annual fees as part of my Milefolio app that you've probably seen in previous episodes. It went through the plan. Now, I did, and I'll show you the full prompt, I did actually say use the rubber duck to review, just so I can kind of have something for this demo. And after it created the plan, it then kicked off the rubber duck review. Again, because since I was on Sonnet 4.6, it went to GPT 5.6 Terra again, and then did the review there. What I love is that it actually did catch something. So here, you'll see the thought process, but rubber duck found 4 blocking issues and several non-blocking ones. And then from there, uh, the Sonnet 4.6 went and actually edited the plan to ensure that it covered everything. So that's how the rubber duck process works there. Now, last thing I do want to mention is that when rubber duck does run, it tends to have some things such as blocking issues. These are things that you really should take care of. Non-blocking issues are like you can choose. It's not going to block you, but these are things that we might recommend. And then sometimes it'll also recommend some other suggestions. Now, rubber duck does not always recommend something, meaning that if there really truly is no recommendation, it's not going to just make up stuff. So that is something that's also pretty awesome there. If you are using the GitHub Copilot app, like I mentioned, you will have to enable it, go to experimental, and then enable it from the rubber duck agent from there. And then the last thing I will mention is that while it's not available on VS Code or the other IDEs, this is something that you can still use in practice. Now, having the rubber duck feature, of course, means that you can leverage the harness and the skills that come with it, but you can absolutely already just prompt and say like, hey, let's switch it to another model and let's have them review the plan as well or review the implementation. And so that is something that you can do um, while rubber duck, I imagine, is being phased out. So that is rubber duck, being able to get a second opinion for your AI agents. Let me know in the comments what you think. Have a good one, everyone.